To get started as a Web3 developer, we need some background knowledge of Web2. Whether you're interested in writing smart contracts, building dev tools, protocol level development, or you want to do AI image generation, make chatbots, anything else, there are a lot of topics that have existed for decades in computer science that are still highly relevant and useful. A large part of what you would like to do today, if you're watching this video, is learning how to build on top of web technologies, things that a user can access through a web browser. Today, we're going to go over through a couple of key terminologies you will definitely come across as you start your journey here, but more importantly, talk about the mindset you should have as a developer who's just getting started. So first of all, let's talk about Frontend. So a front-end is the interface with which a user interacts. So on the web, a front-end would refer to a website like facebook.com, twitter.com, instagram.com, whatever. And you can browse around it, you can click on things, maybe even write stuff. And mobile apps and desktop apps are also valid examples of front-end interfaces. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to focus specifically on web technologies. Have you ever thought about how no matter what browser you're using, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, etc., a website looks the exact same on all of them? And this happens because of web standards. There's an organization known as the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, that sets standards, a set of explicit rules that all companies such as Google, Microsoft, Mozilla, Apple, etc. agree upon and must follow when building things like web browsers across different devices and across different operating systems. Particularly, these standards are set around three key things that every web developer needs to have some level of familiarity with. That is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is the language that is used to visually place elements on your screen. So for example, on the YouTube website, the sidebar, a list of recommended videos, the main video that you're looking at right now. These are visual elements that are placed on your screen in a certain way using HTML. Then there's CSS. CSS is a styling language used to add styles and your own custom flair to the basic elements provided by HTML. So by default, these HTML elements look very boring and very plain, kind of like these old 90s websites. So CSS allows you to customize a lot of things about these HTML elements. So you can, for example, make a button round instead of a rectangle. You can change the font of a certain piece of text. You can have bold text, underline text. You can have something that's a white color, black color, red color, yellow color, and so on. And finally, to tie it all together comes JavaScript. JavaScript is arguably the most important aspect of building on web technologies. It is a fully functional programming language that is used to add real functionality to your website. So with HTML and CSS, you can kind of place elements across the screen and make them look nice, but they won't actually do anything. Like you can have a button, but clicking on that button doesn't do anything. Or on Instagram, as you scroll down Instagram, it will not load more posts to show you if you didn't have JavaScript there. So JavaScript allows you to add this sort of real interactivity and functionality into your websites. It is without a doubt the language of the web. And you will find that most of the lessons here at Learn Web3 will use JavaScript in one way or the other. And a website without JavaScript has no functionality other than letting you look at things in a certain way. So going back to the W3C, the W3C will set standards around how a web browser like Chrome must understand, run, and display the code that is being written by a web developer using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And because of those standards, then all browsers across all devices, across all operating systems work similarly, and you do not have to worry about it. That is the power of building on web technologies. Unlike building mobile apps where iOS and Android have completely different ways of building for them, or how building for Windows is very different from building for macOS, which is very different from building for Linux, the web allows you to write your code once and have it work everywhere, and we're going to leverage that. The second piece we want to talk about is a backend. So we just talked about the front end, and now let's talk about the backend. So the backend refers to part of the software that allows it to operate and cannot usually directly be accessed by the user. So most of your private data, business logic, data processing, things like that happen on the backend, and the front end is used to provide a visual representation of that data. So continuing with the Instagram example, right? Instagram has billions and billions of photos and videos on their platform. Some of those are posted by private accounts, photos and videos that you can only see if you follow that private account. So the filtering of photos required for Instagram to show you your feed on the timeline versus what they actually have available to them happens on the backend. It is important that this backend is not directly accessible by users because otherwise private data, such as posts by these private accounts, can be leaked. So if you've ever read news about some website getting hacked and the user's private information, like their address, names, or credit cards being leaked, this is because there was some bug in their backend that allowed a malicious actor to gain access to it. It is our goal as software developers to build secure backends for our services and only allow users to access information and data that they should have access to. Backend services can be written in a variety of programming languages, JavaScript, Rust, Go, Python, C#, and many more. But as you're starting your journey, since you're going to be learning JavaScript anyway for the front end, you might as well use JavaScript for the backend as well. While each programming language has its own pros and cons, there are not big enough pros and cons for a beginner to try to master multiple different languages and programming paradigms at the same time. I highly recommend if you want to build on web technologies, you choose JavaScript for both the front end and the backend because it works all across the tech stack and you'll be able to focus on what you actually need to do. With that in mind, I want to help you guys set up for success, right? As a new developer, it's very easy to get intimidated. You go online, you talk to other people, you read a blog post, whatever. You will come across terminology you don't quite understand. In fact, I may have said things in the video that you don't quite understand right now. You'll come across terminology, frameworks, libraries, concepts that you don't understand even after you read them twice or thrice. You have to realize that learning programming and becoming a good programmer is a journey. Computer science is not the type of subject that you can memorize. For example, if you were in school and you were taking a history class, you probably memorized a lot of facts. For example, like on what date did X kill Y, or what happened on this date, and so on. However, when you are studying math, it was likely not a similar approach. You cannot really memorize math beyond perhaps a few basic principles. You have to practice, you have to kind of understand it, you need to know the concepts. Computer science is a similar field. You cannot memorize a programming language. You cannot memorize how to solve tricky problems. You cannot memorize how to fix bugs. You need practice. You need concepts and you need understanding. I have met people who have memorized every single function that is available to them in the JavaScript programming language, and yet they fail to solve even the simplest of programming questions. That is because had you just memorized that 1 + 1 = 2, without understanding how addition works or what addition is, you would not be able to say, for example, 47 + 25 = 72. I can ask you to add any two arbitrary numbers, two numbers you may have never encountered before in your life, but given some time, you will be able to add them together. And there's no chance you memorized that specific addition because you've never seen those numbers before in your life, but you understand how addition works, so you're able to do it. You should take the same approach with programming. Don't worry about trying to memorize every single thing that's possible. Try to truly understand what's being talked about. And second piece of advice I'll give you is do not set a timeline. Don't ask questions like, how can I become an expert at XYZ in 6 months? That is an impossible question to answer for anybody. People have no idea how much time you're putting in to learn. They have no idea how much time you're putting in to practice every day, what your past background is, what type of learner you are, and so on. And putting a deadline adds unnecessary pressure to a learning journey that should be admired at each step and taken slow to appreciate its beauty. There will be a day you will truly understand how humans went from being able to generate electricity in wires to representing that electricity as zeros and ones to being able to store those zeros and ones on magnets, and all the way up to building highly realistic 200 gigabyte games that you can look at and not know if that's for real life or not. And you'll think, holy shit, this is so cool, while also knowing there's still so much more I don't know. Learning is a never-ending process. It's actually one of the very few things that humans do their entire life. You should chase knowledge and chase learning to better yourself. Be curious, tinker with things, right? Try new things, take risks, feel the adrenaline. And lastly, never be afraid to ask questions or make mistakes. Especially never be afraid to ask questions in the Learn Web3 Discord server or within the Learn Web3 community. We worked hard to foster a community that is friendly and helpful, and a lot of folks in there who may be answering your questions would have been in the same position as you are right now not that long ago. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you have a question, others likely have it as well. So ask as many questions as you can, make an effort to truly understand things, and people will be more than willing to help you out. Cheers.